Hey NAI football fans, Corey Thorpe here with another edition of the NAIFBALL Podcast, powered by AdCraft USA, your custom apparel, merch, and uniform experts. Our friends at AdCraft have been with us for many years now. They've run web stores for us multiple times. These guys are NAI fans and family who are experts in the apparel and merchandise world. AdCraft allows you to take the hassle out of ordering. Let their knowledgeable design and customer service staff handle everything from hosting the store online, shipping the product, and helping your customers so you can get back to the game. Find them online at adcraftusa.com. All right, NAI football fans, this is Corey Thorpe back with another edition of the NAIF Ball Podcast. As you can see, we're not my normal duds here. We here in North Florida, we had a bit of a snowstorm? Question mark? We didn't get any snow, but we got a heck of a lot of ice, at least for North Florida. So going without the traditional duds. But to make me feel warm, I gotta talk with my guys from South Florida. Maybe they can warm me up. I have head coach Bill Rychel on the NAIF Ball Podcast this week. Coach, have you ever had a fallen iguana in your yard?
I have not. I've heard you see them on the news down here, but I'm sure they're falling right now. I mean, we're fortunately warmer than most of the rest of the country, but it is 60, getting into the 50s, I think, tonight or something. So they start putting these things on the trees so they can't crawl up there, and I don't even know how it works. There's directions on the news, like if you see one, what to do. Don't bring it in your house. I don't know. I'm not touching them regardless. I could they'll wake up when the warms up again and be ready to roll around here.
That is the wildest thing I remember first hearing about it. It's like, so they just, you, I think the weirdest thing is that you just have iguanas roaming around South Florida. I mean, regardless of whether they're in trees or not, it's not exactly, we get little lizards up here, but nothing like a foot long iguana.
More than a foot. I mean, some of them are like small dogs. Like what's weirder, I think, is I'm just used to it. Like you go across campus and there'll be like 20 of them sitting out, some big ones by the lake that's in the back of campus there, and it's just common now. I've been here, I guess here I've been long enough that it's 60 degrees and I'm in a sweatshirt right now, and iguanas don't faze me at all. As when you first get down here, it's so interesting and you want to look at them. Now it's just like it's like a squirrel running across your yard. That it doesn't matter anymore.
You're fully acclimated to the South Florida lifestyle from that Ohio one. Well,
Just trying. I'm trying.
well, Coach, let's take a look at your schedule from a year ago. Kind of take a look and see where we've been. It's a good start to your season with a couple of, at least at the time, top 25 wins, as well as a win against a rising Florida Memorial team there before you finally, I don't want to say get popped in the mouth, but Kaiser takes an early lead on you, and you do claw your way back in that one. But that's one where I was watching it going, that's interesting. Talk to me about, being able to find ways to come back.
Yeah, I mean, when you get to that point, regardless of who you're playing, you get into those situations sometimes that we just didn't play real well, obviously, to start that game, and had some turnovers and just didn't execute. And when you're down by quite a bit like that, there's nothing you can really do besides, okay, let's get back out there and we got to play better. We know that and all those things, and you just take it one step at a time, and all of a sudden we're back and we grab the lead. And there's some of those heartbreak plays at the end of the game. Coulda, woulda, shoulda. Thought we had them. Close chain call on fourth down to stop. So a lot of that stuff at bottom, we just didn't play well enough to win that football game. And when you're playing any college football team for that matter, but obviously a good football team, when you dig yourself a hole like that, it's tough to overcome and make sure you end up on top.
Then you go through couple more weeks at least there. You get your makeup game against Fort Lauderdale. There's probably a hurricane in the mix in there somewhere. Um, you go down to Lakeland, and it's another close one with Southeastern. Southeastern's a team that gave both y'all and Kaiser fits this year. Talk to me about getting the comeback complete, or not the comeback complete, but getting that game won in a tight fashion.
No, it was just a close game. Our defense did a great job of kind of stopping their run. That they're really good at that. They've had a great defense all year. I think they're at the top of our conference in defense. I think I was disappointed that they didn't get in. I thought the Sun Conference was worthy of getting three teams into the playoffs. Obviously, Southeastern being one of them, and they were right on that cusp and didn't get the call. But I think they are a playoff team. I think they, who knows without playing them and seeing everybody, but I would like to imagine that they were probably better than some of the other teams that got into the back end of that playoff picture. But really good football team. We just found ways to maintain and sustain. We had a really good drive to start that game and went out there, and they had some good stops on us. Got a big field goal at the end of the game. I didn't know if we should kick it or not. It's one of those, like, it was almost too close, that we're on kind of the weird angle, weird hash. But we needed to go up by some more points to make sure that we secured that victory and everything else. So that's what we decided to do, and ended up with a good win. That's always fun to play up there, good environment, and obviously playing a good opponent, another good opponent in the Sun Conference. So it was another good win for us.
Yeah, I mean that's definitely that's one of the nicer places I've seen around the NAI. Victory Field is super nice. Went down there I think in October of 2020, so even under COVID restrictions, super nice place to play. Um, would be they be kind of the team that you're saying, okay, they're kind of your next contender in the Sun, or the ones that would have their window opening, or is there someone else that you're pointing at going, you really want to watch out for them? They're going to be really dangerous in a year or two.
I think it's across the board, and I would definitely say Southeastern. That they're a good team. They're well coached. But the way college football works anymore, and the amount of talent that's in Florida and up into southern Georgia by you and everything else, there's there's players and good coaches and good conferences everywhere, and I think you can continue to revamp and reload and alter your roster well enough to get done what you need to. So Southeastern, I think, had a good year. I think Weber had played strong. I mean, we were in a crazy game with them, kind of down to the end there, scoring 10 points in the last 3 minutes or something to make sure we had that victory. Like as you mentioned earlier, Florida Memorial, that they've been getting better every year as well, and have some great teams too. So it's who knows what next year's going to hold. It's the same thing I told our guys that we just started this off-season strength and conditioning program since they got back on campus here after the break. That yeah, we've had some really good success, a lot to be proud of these last 4 years, and there's some higher expectations that we need to achieve. But at the end of the day, Team 2024 is done. This is Team 2025, and until we get out there and start playing games, I think we'll have a really good football team again. But you got to get out there and mesh it together and see what you got. And excuse me, guys coming back and new guys showing up. So it's just kind of melting that together to put your best product out there to hopefully get started in August.
Yeah, I do remember was watching that St. Thomas Weber game at the same time that Kaiser was taking Thomas out behind the woodshed. Um, and I'm just sitting there going, St. Thomas is going to screw around and lose this thing if they're not careful. But I think that does say a lot about Weber, and I know they're well coached over there. Um, know a couple of their guys, and know their quality over there. And then, sort of to round out the season, the kind of just the note I have for your last game is Darius Neal's kind of an okay running back, isn't he?
No, he's a good player. Unfortunately, I think he got hurt in the Kaiser game. They played him in the playoffs, but really good football player. And again, we came on a little bit in the second half and did all right, but that first half and it was a close game. I mean, I think even in the past couple years, we've lost a total of 4 games or so, or 5 games by, I mean, I think a total of 10 or 15 points or something. So as good as seasons we've had, they obviously are really close to be even a lot better. But they were good. They're a well-coached team, really good football. I mean, everybody's good at that point of the year anyhow in some capacity. So we just we came off that bye week and didn't really have a good first half. I don't think put our best foot forward and showed who we really are. And you, again, just like Kaiser, you can't do that in those type of games, that the 2 that we lost there of quality opponents. So it's just executing at a higher level, but a lot to be proud of at the end of it too.
So you're coming into your 6th season. We've talked a lot over the last couple of years that we've had you on about turnover and roster churn and kind of positioning yourself in this kind of first real turnover of rosters from your initial kind of 4-year term. But at this point, you're starting to kind of get a real rotation going on your roster. And honestly, looking at it, if I'm you, I feel fairly good. Of course, you're losing a couple of pieces that are going to be really, really hard to replace, especially when you look on offense. Rontavious Farmer is obviously a guy that is difficult to replace, and then you've got at wide receiver a guy who's been there for what feels like day one in Kalitri Zhao. Um, Obviously last year you lost another guy in Jeannot Pierre. But talk to me about your offense. You've got Keely Watson coming back as your signal caller, and you've just got to find a couple of pieces around him. David Hayes is coming back, but you got to find a guy to hand the ball off to, and got to make sure you got a guy to keep him off of David Hayes.
Yeah, and I mean, you're right. Like we finally, you get through that, I guess, the first 4 years, and you finally have some college graduates from your program. So that's kind of the first phase of change. But like anywhere, and probably more magnified when you start a program, like a guy like Tay Farmer, who's played for us for 4 years and just had a record-breaking career. I mean, he's led the nation twice in rushing. He set the Florida collegiate rushing record for all divisions. Kalitri, who's played for us for 5 years. So you start to lose those guys that not only are they really good football players, but they've been carrying the bulk of the load for a long time. It changes. And a guy like Tay, I don't know, obviously, of all the accolades he has and the stats to go along with it. I don't care if you're a newer program like us or any program. There's certain players that you have once in a while that you never really replace them, right? That somebody could come in and break all of Tay's records, and I'm sure that'll happen at some point. But it's not like the same difference of he's a replaceable guy. But at the same time, I say that, and nobody in football is irreplaceable. So it's putting a new team together. I'm sure we'll be a little bit different. And I think the way we approach anything, regardless of when we had those guys you just mentioned and everybody else, the players dictate what we're going to do. I mean, obviously, there's a luxury in college football and that you can recruit the guys that you want that fit your system and everything else. But I was taught a long time ago, growing up with my head coach, Larry Karras, who's the all-time winningest coach in college football, fortunate to play for him, that we've always operated players, formations, plays on offense, defense, and special teams, that those guys dictate what we can do. And we're always going to try to be balanced, but we might have to do things a little bit differently based on who our personnel is and what we're good at and how that evolves. And not that we're going to run every stinking thing that we can think of from an offensive scheme standpoint, but just got to see how our guys fit in. And it makes it a lot of fun, gives new guys opportunities. Really appreciate the guys that were here and helped us build this to where we're at. But we'll be, and again, it's not like you graduated the whole team, right? The most important position in football is coming back at quarterback. At the same time, we got all those offensive linemen were young, so a lot of good ones coming back there. David Hayes is a difference maker, just a great kid, great player. That there's a lot of juice left that way too. So yeah, we got to make sure we're running the ball correctly. But I think the way that we operate, that'll that'll take care of itself and bring everything together. And even with the quarterback, he's going to graduate somewhere too and is going to have had a great career for us. And I'm sure there's going to be another one that comes right behind him to have a great career as well.
Yeah, looking at the roster in the stats, I did get a smile across my face when I saw that the guy with the second most rushing yards on your team last year was a guy from my hometown in Panama City, out of Rutherford High School. Gave me a
Yeah.
little kick there. Now, granted, it's from a rival high school, but we'll deal with that.
Still the Panhandle.
Yeah, exactly. You don't see a ton out of the Panhandle, so you'll love it when you do see it. Defensively, you are you're returning most of your DBs, looks like. But between your front seven there, you've got some guys to replace between Kendall Wilson and Nick Engler. Nick Engler is another one of those guys. Just like we said before, that has been around for what seems like forever. And obviously you're going to be rotating your D linemen in and out and in and out. But talk about losing two guys who know how to read and react like Engler and Wilson, and who's going to replace them.
Yeah, they're going to be tough to replace. I mean, obviously Nick is. There's a reason that him and Tay are getting all these NFL looks, and I mean, I think more 3/4 of the NFL teams have been on campus to see a lot of these guys in person. So when you have that at this level, they're obviously some pretty special players. And Nick has dominated against anybody we played, and Kendall has had a long career playing a couple different positions for us on defense, but has been productive at both of those positions. So yeah, extremely hard to replace. But again, it's going to be obviously D line, especially you're playing in South Florida, you're playing in the Sun Conference. There's good teams that you got to have. You got to have some depth and rotation down there. And at the same time, especially to start the season, there's the heat that if you want to play at the high level, you got to make sure you're getting through that. So it's that's the position too, where I think you have to have a multitude of guys. So I'm sure there's some that are going to step up and have a great season and everything else, but it's kind of a whole host of them right now of who we're going to have out there and battle it out. And probably whoever's playing really well at those couple weeks or at the time or for that game is the guy that we try to keep fresh and keep in there and keep pressure on the quarterback and stop the run and get that done.
So, every year you're obviously going to be looking at what you can do better and all that sort of fun stuff. If you're not getting better, you're falling behind, especially with the competition in the Sun is absolutely getting better. But what is the area on or off the field that y'all are really looking on at focusing on in 2025?
There's a couple things I think that obviously to get where we are right now in a relatively short period of time, there is a culture that has to be set to achieve some of those goals. But that culture has to evolve and it has to continue to grow. It's just like becoming a better football team or a stronger student athlete or whatever, physically, mentally, all that piece of it. I think we have a really good culture, but we got to even hammer it home even more and create more of it. And it's some of those leaders that graduated, who takes their spot from that point off the field, who's going to step up there just as importantly as who's going to step up to carry the football like Tay did, as many who's going to take some of those carries and some of the sacks and tackles for loss that Nick had and Kendall and everybody involved. So it's building that leadership, I think, and just revamping the team. The exciting part is every year, regardless if all those guys were coming back again, it's still a brand new football team that you're adding pieces to the puzzle. People get better. Other people might have an injury or something unfortunate that way. So you never know how the season is exactly going to go and how you have to approach it from one week to another. So I think it's just a lot of fun building that team. I think it's continuing to, with the culture, just continue to be better teammates. I think what I said to our guys the other day, and again, not that we're struggling in this area or anything else. You don't win as many football games as we did if you're awful at some of these things that matter. But what really stood out to me when you watch that national championship game, it didn't. The amount of love those guys had for each other and playing for each other and being great teammates. And considering the state of college football, especially at some of those highest levels right now of how things are perceived and approached, it was kind of a breath of fresh air to see how much they wanted to win for each other, what they had to go through to get to that kind of the top point of their division and things like that. So that's all part of it. It doesn't really change what we do. It's adding some tweaks and twists and the personalities we have and how we can coach better. It's just trying to get better every day. And I've talked to everyone in our program, and when you talk to these recruits, we have high expectations. We don't shy away from those. And with high expectations, it takes more sacrifice, it takes more work, and there doesn't need to be overhaul changes to go from 9 wins to finishing where everybody wants to finish. But it's not like doing the same thing over and over again either is going to result in the same finish. So it's exciting to see what we're going to get into this year with this new group of guys. And some places are younger than the others than we have been in the past. So how do we develop them in the weight room more than we have when the other guys were kind of maxing out some of the strength that they could gain on the back end? And some young guys have a lot of room to grow, and spring ball is more exciting because that position hasn't been as wide open as it is right now in a long time, even though we compete in everything we do and you get what you deserve. But it's a blast, kind of the refreshing rejuvenation of here's the next year.
How do you go about resetting that culture from year to year? Is that something that is you're really instilling in your players so that once they become or trying to help your players come out with, so that by the time they are upperclassmen, it's kind of natural for them to take that progressive cultural leader step, or how does that work behind the scenes?
I think every year is different and every team is different. So it's what are the needs of that team? What are you potentially deficient at, and what are you really good at? And you got to build off of what you're really good at and strengthen the things you might be lacking a little bit, right? And it's identifying those guys of who are going to be those guys. And you got to get a couple, or who's going to lead by example, who's going to lead by vocally, who does this well, what's in your wheelhouse within your personality. And I think once you establish your culture, you have to continue to grow it, and you have to continue to, like I said before, make it better in some aspect of what we need to do. But it's also the part of, okay, what are the new personalities that you have coming in, whether it be from a transfer standpoint to a first year freshman to a guy that's on the team, that's been on the team but has a new role. How do you absorb that into your culture? So it's continuing to grow and get better, but it doesn't make you stagnant, or it doesn't make you lose a step. So I think it's just evaluating that. You get a lot of that in the weight room. I mean, it's the beauty. The strength coaches are probably just as important or more than important than any other coach on our staff. The amount of time they spend with them and what they can build with them from a culture standpoint. I think it's your whole staff being kind of the same mantra of what's important and what those standards are. And you just have to hold people to your standard and continue to try to raise them and push them out of their comfort zone and make them the best possible person that you can on and off the field.
Well, Coach, it is going to be a very interesting season next year as we look into what the Sun Conference is going to look like. We see a Kaiser squad who is, just coming off a run that they were very close to the mountaintop, and we saw what happened to that Kaiser squad in 2023 when it was so close and yet so far. So you can't overlook them. You've got that Southeastern team that we've talked about at length. We've talked about Weber and Florida Memorial. It's going to be very interesting to see what's going on. Obviously, you've got teams where you're trying to schedule and get scheduling alliances in with and find the right place for your team. You're trying to balance, playing your Fort Lauderdales with, trying not to, hinder your resume too much with some of these outside teams. But talk to me about what you're looking forward to the most about the 2025 season.
I think it's just building this group that we have and seeing how we can get the best team possible to start in August, and how much more we can improve throughout the whole season and see where we can get to. That, like I said, there's high expectations. I just look forward to the process of it with the group, right? And trying to help them grow with, I think, ultimately allows them to grow as a person of everything you got to go through, the ups and downs and everything else throughout a season, of how that helps their life in general after that. But with the conference, it's going to be crazy. Everybody, I'm sure, that has good players coming back. Everybody's going to add good players, and everybody's got some good players leaving. So how that shakes out and adjusts, how some coaching changes, make things more interesting and unknown. Probably one of the big things I'm looking forward to is when you talk about teams like Southeastern that should get into the playoffs potentially, or across the big talk of NAIA of the, obviously we're in this the playoff format that's taken place for 2 years now, but we're all scheduled crossover games with the Mid South Conference this year. So there's going to be 2 games of everybody in our league guaranteed against somebody else, another good conference. So seeing how we stack up there to really show kind of the product we have here in the Sun against some traditionally good NAI football teams that people look for in the Midwest that they want to brag about all the time, that we're fairly new down here in Florida, right? And the Midwest has done a good job with football, but there's all across the country right now that's good spots. So, and I think across NAI football moving forward this year, you're going to see more and more where it's applicable and conducive to the schedule of people playing some different people, just knowing what it's going to take to make some jumps that you want to, or sustain where you're at, or challenge your team to make sure you're ready to compete at the national level. So I think that's going to be interesting to see, and how it all shakes out, and who continues to do. The same teams kind of start to stay at the top, or some of us in Florida have started to make a climb and are kind of hopefully sustain some of that momentum and get some more people with us. So it's just a different national landscape that should be a lot of fun.
It really is. I mean, I remember when we started this, and Kaiser was kind of the new kid on the block. Um, the Sun really didn't get a whole lot of love, and even a couple years ago when Kaiser makes that run with 3 losses as the 12 seed, really I do think the Sun has stepped into its own in how the national or how the coaches have seen it, how the national selection committee sees the Sun. And speaking as a little bit of a Sun homer, I am happy to see that, because I do see the level of play here and the quality of player that I get to see on a week to week basis. I've said it before. There are a lot of teams where the players are starting to approach upper echelon of D2 kind of size, in terms of your average player, and that makes me very excited, because size doesn't win ball games, but size does. It don't hurt, that's for sure and certain. So it'll be
No, blast. Yeah, it's been great. I think, well, and I've said this, I think, with you before. Everybody wants to come and recruit Florida, right? They all don't have a problem coming down here and try to get some of these great athletes we have, but a lot of teams aren't willing to come play the Sun Conference teams either. But then they won't vote for some of our teams either to get there. It's still kind of a good old Billy league sometimes, and I think you get asked all the time in recruiting, like, what's the difference? And I've been fortunate enough to play and then coach. I played Division III football and had a great experience. Wouldn't trade it for the world. And then to coach at the Division II level and the FCS level and the NAI level, small scholarship football. And the way it works anymore, I mean, the guys that we have on our campus that are legitimate prospects for beyond college here,
yeah.
There's scouts that come down and look at our guys rather than going to some of the Division I schools when they have restrictions in their schedule and getting back to where they need to be on the road, that they're looking at our guys, and there's not that much of a drop off, and it's kind of putting your team together to see how good you can be. So it's, at the end of the day, we all are often scholarships that get split up for the most part. It's not a 1-for-1 like at the Power 4 level. So it's exciting. I think, obviously, like you said, there's great talent across the state of Florida, and hopefully we can continue to build the momentum within the conference.
Coach, thanks for coming on the show today. I hope that the system that went through here yesterday doesn't decrease the temperatures too much down there. And so we'll see. I'm looking forward to the summer at this point. Summer cannot come quick enough. I live in Florida because I don't like the cold weather. This is for the birds. But second, looking forward to fall and what that's going to bring, and just cannot wait to see some football again.
No, it should be a lot of fun. We got to get you down here to check out our place. We got phase 1 of our stadium is going in this fall, so
Nice.
you got to have to come check it out and see if we can get you down here for a couple of days. But at that point, it's going to be hot as hell. So it's not going to save you right now from what you're going through, but we'll see.
I will take it over this. I will take 100 degrees and a heartbeat over 30 some odd degrees. And the people that are listening right now from the Midwest are laughing at me, but look, you got to make trade-offs.
It's 60, and my wife and kids, when I get home, are probably going to ask me to turn on the heater, and we haven't turned it on in 6 years, so I'm not planning on starting now. It'll warm up again here within the next at least the 5 days. So
Thanks.
We're only at 60. We'll get down to the 50s, throw on a sweatshirt and a blanket, and let's figure it out.
We'll be fine. All right, Coach, appreciate you, and we'll talk to you soon.